Have you ever wondered why some scripts fail miserably while others work wonders? The answers might just lie in the principles of influence. Hi, my name is Shashank Shekhar. I'm the founder and CEO of InstaMortgage. And here I'm going to talk about 4 principles of persuasion that you can use with all the scripts that you're getting from all these rock stars. So you have gotten some scripts already. You will be getting some more as the show goes along. But really what I'm here to talk about is it's not just the scripts itself, but more, what are the principles of psychology? What are the principles of persuasion that you can use to get better results from those scripts? So there are several principles. Some of them Robert Cialdini talks about in his book, Psychology, Principles of Persuasion. I'll be talking about 4 out of those that I have used for years in my business to get to the level where I have. The number one principle that has really worked for me through years is the principle of reciprocity. Now, it may sound very basic, the fact that this principle is based on the idea that people feel obliged to give back when someone does something for them. By offering something of value or doing a favor for someone, you can increase the likelihood of them reciprocating. Now, there was a famous Mint experiment or a Mint survey that was done with restaurant waiters. So when waiters were giving the final check, and they were given, of course, some tips, that was one. And then they actually gave the check with some mint with it. And that significantly increased the tips that they were getting, which was surprising, is because mint by itself costs just pennies, but the increase in tips was quite significant. And that shows that the people who were receiving the mint had in some way thought that they had to reciprocate. And that's really the principle of reciprocation. So how do you use this in your business as a mortgage loan officer? Now, you could do that the same with borrowers. There have been tons of really good scripts about how to get people to work with you. But even before that, even before you deliver that script, if you were to give something of value, and that could be several things that we can do. You can give them free guides, you can give them free tools, you can give them free calculators, you can give them free consultation, anything and everything that can help them in their journey of home ownership or refinancing, whatever they're doing. Then it becomes really important for them to see that, okay, all of this is being given to me with no expectation. How do I reciprocate that? And your chances of working with them or them working with you increases significantly when you do that. It's same with real estate agents. Some of you might not know, I got in the business in 2008 with $1,900 of savings and 3 people that I knew in the entire country. And then went on to become the top 200 in Scotsman 5 years later, and have been on that list. Last year was number 15 in the country on National Mortgage News top producers ranking. And a lot of that really has come from real estate agent referral business. And that was built on law of reciprocity, so to say, which is the fact that for me, it was always about how do I provide value before I ask for business. And again, it's the same thing for you, is that you can do that by giving them a book that they might find useful, notes from a conference that you attended, like something like this. Maybe you're taking notes already and you are able to provide it to some of the real estate agents you want to work with. Invitation to a class that you might be doing, someone else is teaching, a recording of a class of videos. There are so many possible options and avenues that you can provide to a real estate agent before you ask for business. So that's your principle of reciprocity. Let's get to the second principle that I want to talk about, which is principle of commitment and consistency. Now, this principle says that people generally strive to be consistent with their words, beliefs, and actions. Once they make a public commitment to take a small step towards something, they are more likely to stay committed and take further steps in that direction. And you would have seen that example yourself. When you book something on OpenTable or you book something with a restaurant, they send you 2 or 3 reminders on text saying, hey, are you going to show up for that appointment, for that reservation? Type yes if you're going to show up. By typing yes 2 or 3 times, you're kind of committing to the process. And by doing that, the restaurants minimize their chances of no-shows. And that's just getting you to commit to something. And again, with the mortgage example, the way you can use that with borrowers is that if you have an online form on your site, you start with easy questions. You get them to answer questions like, hey, what's your mortgage balance? What's your interest rate? Where are you thinking of buying? The more they get committed to the process of filling the form, as they come later to the later part of the form completion, where they have to give their name or they have to give their email, some of the more sensitive information, they are already more committed to the process. And so they will go ahead and complete that form. It's the same thing when you're trying to get business from real estate agents, whether they are listing agents or buyer agent. At the beginning of the loan process, if you were to ask them saying, hey, if I do a great job of this loan process, I close on time with no fires along the way, and the client is happy and your sellers are happy and everybody else is happy, would it be okay if we sat down for a coffee and I understood more about your business? That's asking for a commitment right at the beginning of the process. If you repeat it for them to commit to the same thing, say during the loan process, chances of you getting that meeting at the end of the loan process is significantly higher, because again, it's the principle of commitment and consistency. If people commit to something and if they repeat that commitment 2 or 3 times, chances of them meeting that commitment or delivering of that commitment, it's significantly higher. Let's talk about the third principle here, which is social proof or consensus. Now, what this principle tells us is that people tend to look to others for guidance on how to behave in certain situations. When individuals are uncertain about what to do, they often rely on the actions and behaviors of others as a form of social proof. Now, what this means is that, especially when it comes to home buying, which, as we know, is the biggest financial decision practically everyone takes, it's a big decision. And so people are looking for social proof all the time. So that's why having that online presence, when people are searching you on Google, having those online reviews where people are talking about the fact that, hey, I worked with Shashank and he was amazing, is great, is because that's what happens, is that they are looking for that social proof. Hey, I'm not making that mistake. Shayla, I think, was talking about this, is that when you're going to a realtor and asking for business, one thing in their head is running is that, am I making a mistake by giving them this referral? Is because potentially my entire reputation is at risk. Similarly, for borrowers or home buyers, I mean, it's almost their entire life is at risk. At least at that point of time, that's what they believe, is because that's a home that they're going to buy. And they don't want to trust or work with a loan officer where there's no social proof for them. So it's very important that you build that online presence. I'll give you an example of one time when a client reached out to me and said they wanted to refinance. And I gave them a really solid deal, and they were saving about $200 a month on that refinance. But it was a very big loan amount. And the borrower comes to me and says, yeah, that's great, but $200 a month is not good enough for me. And so I'm not going to move forward. Now, I could have just stopped there and just let it go. But what I did was I sent a follow-up email. I said, that's great that you don't want to move forward with $200 savings. And I totally understand that that may not be significant or substantial for you. But let me tell you, 92% of the people that I work with who refinance with me save less than $200 a month on an average. And you know what happened next? He went ahead and completed the online application. That's consensus. That's social proof. He's like, oh, if 92% of people are doing it, I must be stupid not to do this. That's the social proof consensus part of it. And that's something that you want to use in your favor when you're trying to get more business. You can do the same thing with real estate agents. When I talk to listing agents where my buyer has made an offer, I try to find a connection in the same office that I have worked with some other real estate agents. If somebody is working at Berkshire Hathaway, I said, oh, you are with the Berkshire Hathaway Palo Alto office. I work with Susie in the same office. We have worked on a couple of transactions in the past. That's social proof. That's not just a general social proof saying I work with some realtor, someone in the neighborhood, but I actually work with a realtor who is in your office. That's a very precise and a specific kind of a social proof that I'm providing for them to really like or trust me, even though they don't know me from before. So that was a social proof or consensus principle. And that brings me to a really, really important part of scripting, which is who delivers this script really matters. Because you hear, again, some of these top loan officers talking about scripts, they get significantly higher results or better results than you are getting. And you're wondering, why is that? Why is that they are using the same script and getting better results while I'm using that script and not getting as good a result that I should have? And that's because who delivers the script matters. And you may not like it as because you're like, okay, I am not that person yet, and which is totally fine. But that brings me to the principle of authority. The principle of authority says that people have a natural tendency to obey figures of authority. By establishing and demonstrating expertise, credibility, and social status, individuals can leverage the principle of authority to influence others. And what that means is what's something that I have done practically all my life. Again, as I mentioned, that in 2008, I really have had nothing going for me. But in 2009, I started blogging. I was one of the only 5 or 6 mortgage bloggers in the industry back then. And since then, I'm not just blogged, I've written 3 books. I speak all over the country. I write for Forbes and Inc. and Housing Wire and everybody else. All of this brings principle of authority. When people want to work with someone, especially for a high ticket size, a high involvement transaction like buying a home, they are looking to work with somebody who has credibility, who has reputation. And what that did for me is that even being in the San Francisco Bay Area, where my rates are consistently higher than most banks' rates and most credit unions' rate, these home buyers tend to work with me is because they're like, we don't want to mess it up. We want to work with somebody who is an expert in the field. And that's why it's important that you follow some of those things. You work on building your brand. And it could be whatever is that you feel comfortable with, whether you are comfortable with words, then blogging, something that I have done for a long period of time might be good for you. If you're great with videos, of course, you can work with video marketing. If you're great just with audios, podcasting could be your one thing. It doesn't matter what's your medium, what's the message is really important. So focus on the message, work on a medium that you're comfortable with, but to start building that. Building authority could take months, sometimes years, like it did for me. But once you build that authority, then that principle of authority, where people tend to gravitate to people, or people tend to give business to people who have that authority or status, it's something that can bring you business. So really, there you have the 4 principles of persuasion, 4 principles of influence that I talked about: the principle of reciprocity, principle of commitment and consistency, principle of social proof or consensus, and finally, the principle of authority. As I said, there are several other principles, but these 4 should really hold you in good stead if you're trying to get those scripts that these rock stars are giving you today, and then get better results from this.